Okay, so this is going to be a down and dirty, really quick how-to on the brake conversion kit, adapter kit, what have you, that I am offering for the 9.3 and currently the early 9.5s. As some of you may know, the early 9.5s use the same brake caliper mounting geometry as the 9.3 and the new Gen 900, and this is what this is going to pertain to. It's definitely going to be the case on the new Gen 900, OG 9.3, and 100,000 other GM, Opel, Vauxhall, Daewoo, Holden applications. So pretty simple and straightforward on what's going on here. There's similar kits that are available through MapTune and things like that, and they all kind of have limitations. One of those limitations is having to cut the ears off of the caliper or what have you. Unfortunately, that's still the case, but with those caliper adapter brackets, you end up kind of guessing, a lot of trial and error. You cut away a little bit and hopefully it clears, and just back and forth. So what I've done to make it easy, since I have the CAD files for actually making the adapter brackets, I went ahead and made cut templates for your steering knuckle and another set for your caliper side, because your caliper is going to need a little bit of clearance as well. This specific setup here, I'm going to be demonstrating the Cobalt SS calipers, which are a little bit different than if you wanted to do the same setup in the V6 Aero from the 9.3, the new Gen 9.3. So that being said, I have templates that are specific to each caliper bracket. Each caliper bracket is different the way that I'm offering them. Even though the bolt patterns are all the same, the bolt sizes are different. The Cobalt caliper uses a 12 mil bolt, and the 9.5, and I think the V6 Aero uses a 14 millimeter caliper bolt. So that being said, everything that's going to be on here is going to be for specific to the Cobalt SS calipers. So get this mocked up and start going at it. One thing I want to start with noting is they're pretty accurately portrayed to the ears there. Basically just cut and stick. All I've done at this point is I chase the threads just out of habit, and then I hit the surface here with a flap disc, actually a roll-lock on an angle die grinder, just to kind of knock off mill scale and make sure that these stick as well as possible. So real quick, I'm going to cut these out the way that I would recommend having you cut them out. Even cutting out the bolt holes to kind of help you line up a little bit, and stick it on there, scribe it, and I'll probably get at it with a grinder. So I'll take you along for all that, and then carry on to the caliper. So we'll get going. So pretty much straightforward. It's cut and stick. Early on when I was doing these, I was sending the caliper adapter kits with these as paper templates to cut out, and I was assuming, using spray adhesive or something like that would be easy enough for anybody. But just to make it even easier, I'm gonna send these out in the future on stickers, just to make it easy, and stick it straight to there and call it good. So at this point, I know I have to cut a little bit off the top here, both sides, and then cutting the ears off there. Each casting is a little bit different on these cast iron knuckles here, so I wouldn't expect to kind of leave the top here or to use, the template up to, flush on the flange here, definitely center them up over the bolts and then take away a little bit of material if you have to. It's a very little mount, and I'm sure it's just a casting difference, but just a heads up. Now at this point, I'm going to try to basically scribe these with a blade. I would use a marker that might wipe off. I've kind of gotten used to just using a razor knife to do stuff like that. It seems to be a little bit more long lasting of a mark. So I'm going to mark these ears and go at it with a grinder. Okay, now you can kind of see, pretty simple little operation there. You'll notice that when you get the templates and whatnot, that trimming actually favors the steering knuckle on the 9.3 900, and that's because it's cast iron. It's a little bit more robust. I try to take as little material out of the aluminum caliper as possible, just because you can sacrifice a little bit of strength or material out of the cast iron without giving up strength. So I'm gonna put this aside and repeat the process on the caliper, and I'll show you that as well. So since the ears on the caliper stick out and have these recesses and they're kind of shaped very uniquely, I'd say, what I recommend is actually cutting along this backside here and cutting out your bolt holes and leaving the rest in place. Don't worry about the dashed line to start with. Get it in place and then come back and actually cut on your dotted line. Take that material away, and that actually gives you a good scribe mark. And again, you might ask, why stick this on there and leave a scribe mark? And to me, the answer is obvious. If this peels off, you still have a reference to go off of. So it's ideal to leave this in place. Hopefully it stays as you're cutting, but if it gets too hot and peels off, you have a backup mark to reference. So I'm gonna trim this out, carry right along. All right, pretty straightforward. Now you can see compared to the knuckle side, very little material is taken out of the caliper here. The other reason for that is, even though these are 12 mil bolts, there's an 18 millimeter steel bushing essentially that takes up a lot of the load, which is a really great design. I really like it. I haven't seen it in other Brembos before on a post type mount like this, but in any case, if I take too much material away, that big diameter has a better chance of tearing out. So kind of we're getting just the minimum amount of material we need to get off there to get clearance. So I'm gonna get the bulk of this aluminum cut with an angle grinder and a cutting disc. And now typically you are not supposed to cut aluminum with an abrasive cutting disc. They're just not compatible generally. Now I use beeswax when I'm cutting aluminum. I do a fair bit of cutting with an angle grinder and an abrasive cutting disc using the wax. So I definitely recommend that. It just is a nice way to get around that rule of thumb, nice way to cut a bulk of material. Then I'll come back and finish it out with a die grinder, just that inside radius there to kind of smooth that out. So I'm gonna throw the camera on the tripod and get to it. All right, pretty straightforward, I'd say. Nothing too special there. Didn't really even need to deal with this radius there because it's way beyond where the caliper mounting tabs are on the steering knuckle. But let's see. Just kind of cleans it up a little bit. You can see that bushing on the backside there. You're gonna have to nip away just a little bit of it, but there is plenty of material left to take up that load, especially with that bushing being there. So I'm gonna bolt this all together and show you what it looks like. All right, so that's gonna wrap this video up. Pretty straightforward. That's the Cobalt caliper on the early Saab stuff. This is gonna apply to not only the Cobalt caliper and Cobalt rotor setup, which is kind of the most common, but this is also gonna apply to the Cobalt caliper with the Alfa Romeo Giulia 330 millimeter rotors as well. So that's pretty much gonna be it. Hopefully this information is helpful. If you have any questions, always feel free to contact me. Instagram is by far the best way to do so. I appreciate your time. Have a good one.